Hello and welcome to another Capital Ideas. I'm Sandy Behan and our guest this week is Norman Cooper from the Oklahoma Education Association. Welcome.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, this is your first time with us, and I know the kids are going to talk to you about OEA and its function and your job in more detailed terms, but very quickly let's talk about the job that you have with OEA.
Well, my official job title is legislative specialist, which loosely defined, that means that I am a lobbyist and I represent the interest of the Oklahoma Education Association, which we believe are the interest of the great majority of classroom teachers and support employees and school administrators, and the interest of public education in the state of Oklahoma. I spend a lot of time at the Capitol working with the leadership of the legislature, monitoring state agencies and working with the various boards and agencies to make sure that the views and the needs of public education are well known by people in government.
OEA represents about 40,000 teachers, right?
Approximately, we have about 25 to 28,000. Don't know the exact number, but 25 to 28,000 active teacher members, counting our student members, our retired members, vocational technical education, higher education, probably around 45,000 or so members.
Okay, and then I think there are two other formally organized teacher groups in the state. One is the AFT and the other one is the...
I believe that there are two or three smaller groups. I think there is an association of professional Oklahoma educators. Don't know much about them. They're very small, but there is another group that's better known as the American Federation of Teachers, primarily a local organization in Oklahoma City.
And do you work with them in creating a legislative agenda, or are you pretty much on your own?
On occasion, we'll work with AFT. They have only a single lobbyist there. We have more than 10 registered lobbyists at the Capitol. APOE, to my knowledge, I've never run across a representative from that organization at the Capitol. That's not to say that there aren't people there trying to represent their point of view, but I've never personally had to deal with them.
Okay. Each year OEA creates a legislative agenda, the things that they would like to see happen, the bills that they would like to see passed, or the changes that they would like to see in current law. Last year's session was both good and bad for OEA. What were some of the successes and some of the, and I won't call them failures, but...
Well, every year you always have mixed results. You never have a legislative session where you walk away from it and say, that was really great, because it's a battle from the first week of February to the last week of May. But it's an interesting process. Last year, one of the better things was the fact that there was at least a little growth money because of economic growth in Oklahoma from the year before. There was some money that could go to the various state agencies, and in particular, of course, we're interested in as much money as we can get directed toward public schools. We think that public education, particularly the OEA's views, particularly kindergarten through 12th, that's probably the most important priority or the most important function of state government. So therefore, we think it's right for us to remind the lawmakers that they need to protect public education, which we think is the most important public institution that there is. So funding of education was a limited success last year. We were less than pleased at the end of the session when the governor vetoed Senate Bill 1100 that knocked out a provision that would have provided large numbers of career teachers across the state of Oklahoma some much needed salary increases. Even though the money was appropriated, the enabling legislation in Senate Bill 1100 that would have changed the minimum salary schedule was vetoed by the governor. So that kind of thing caused a considerable reaction among our members around the state, and they weren't happy with that, nor were we. But there were, as in any legislative session, you get some success, some not so successful.
Now this year's agenda, of course, will look at trying to put more money into common schools and higher ed, just as you have in the past, because there is more money again this year.
Right. The State Board of Equalization has certified $217 million in new growth revenue. And by the way, that's revenue that over and above last year that was achieved through economic growth alone in Oklahoma, not due to any tax increases. In fact, last year's legislative session, the second session of the 45th legislature, handed out numerous tax cuts. And I don't know the exact figures, but estimated generally in the neighborhood of $50 to $60 million in tax reductions. So you have a growth of revenue because of the growth of the economy, and then some tax cuts. This year's growth is every bit as impressive as last year's. In fact, some state leaders, including the Attorney General and the State Superintendent and others on the State Board of Equalization, have questioned whether the $217 million even represents what is there. Some people have said that it's a lowball figure. And so there's been quite a bit of debate among the members of the State Board of Equalization as to exactly how do they arrive at the figure of $217 million. There's plenty of money there. It's now a matter of how you spend it and what agency or what programs of government need it most.
Okay, but OEA isn't just about money for teachers. That's oftentimes a misconception. What are some of the other points in your legislative agenda?
Right. When I say funding, when I say $217 million, we're talking about, we believe that funding, that schools just need to be funded, and that teachers will, of course, get their pay out of that increased available revenue. But we're interested in not only funding, but in other things that make the public education a sound, valuable public institution for the people of Oklahoma. We are interested in reforming the system, and we're interested in improving the curriculum. We want to help to make public education, improve educational opportunities for the students of Oklahoma. So our program goes far and wide away from just funding. We are interested in the issue of charter schools, for example. The OEA's position last year during the session was not opposition to charter schools, which is a relatively new approach to running schools. That's come up in the last 5 to 6 years, which would allow teachers, patrons, community organizations to try new and innovative ways of running schools, either in conjunction with local boards of education or separate from them. So that's an issue that was debated last year, didn't get resolved. It probably will be an issue again this year. One great concern of ours is the health of the Oklahoma teacher retirement system. As you may have heard, over the last several years, the system has developed an unfunded liability, somewhere estimated around $4.7 to $4.8 billion, which means that about 60% of the current and future obligation of the system is unfunded. I think the figure is now up to 39 or 40% funded. The Oklahoma teacher retirement system is the third lowest funded system of any public employees, of the large public employee retirement systems in the country. So that constitutes a problem. There is a funding schedule that, if met by the legislature, that was originally set up in 1992 and then a year or so later in other legislation, that set up a funding schedule to make sure that the unfunded liability is paid for, it's taken care of. And OEA's view is that in order to protect the interest of current and future retirees, that system has to be managed properly. So we monitor that closely, and we're interested in working with any members in government or any of the policymakers to make sure that that system is protected and will be here for educators who are depending for their future retirement on that system 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. That's one of the things we're involved in.
The governor came out, I think it was yesterday or the day before, with specific education proposals, and I think there were 4 main parts to it. For example, he recommended or suggested that there ought to be a 4-year core curriculum requirement for graduation. with English, social studies, math, and science, that all students graduating from a high school in Oklahoma would have to have those 4 years of those core courses. Does OEA support that kind of a proposal?
We are for very stringent academic standards for K-12. So no, we're not in conflict with the governor's proposal in that regard. I'm not a curriculum specialist, so therefore I can't say to you exactly. My own preference is that I'd like to see that the requirements strengthened, and you know, I think that the governor's proposal is one that needs to be looked at, and I think that the OEA and others who make decisions will look very favorably upon his recommendations this year.
Okay, second suggestion he made was that teachers in schools whose test scores go up should be rewarded with a one-time $500 to $5,000 gift, shall we say, from the state as a
bonus,
reward, one-time
right.
bonus. Is that practical or feasible or manageable?
Well, the governor's mentioned something like that before. I think this is a little different version this year. That wasn't palatable to us last year, and it probably still isn't palatable to us, because our basic view is that all Oklahoma teachers are underpaid. We think that we have some of the toughest standards for teachers coming into the profession in this state, and for us to, and then we pay them very poorly. I mean, I say poorly in the sense that Oklahoma, even with a large amount or large infusion of money into the system in the last 6 to 7 years since the passage of House Bill 1017 in 1990, we've made little or no gain in the area of teacher salaries compared to other states. So we believe that we have excellent teachers. We know that we all can improve ourselves, so we're always looking for ways to bring that about. But no, we don't believe that kind of approach is a good approach unless you've established a good basic compensation system from the beginning. If teachers were to be paid competitively with other professions and with other states, and then we wanted to look at ways to add incentives to that, then yes, we'd be open to it. But to simply say that one teacher qualifies for $500 or another teacher qualifies for $5,000 only because the scores of their students on standardized tests meet certain levels, no, we think there are a great number of educators all over the state of Oklahoma who are doing an outstanding job who would never qualify for a one-time bonus. And that is the key too. It's a one-time bonus. Inflation that is approximately 3% one year and then another 3% the following year, it's still going to be here. It's not a one-time deal. It's every year. And so teachers need to have their salaries increased and then increased again to keep up with the cost of living.
States like, I think it's Tennessee, that have implemented a merit system of sorts. Have they worked?
Oh, I'm not an expert on that, so I really couldn't respond as well as others could. I understand that that's a mixed bag. We don't think it's gotten the desired results, and we don't think that you give bonuses or that you should give bonuses or incentives to people that you're underpaying in the first place. Get them up to a level that is appropriate for their profession. Teaching is an honored profession. It ought to be treated in an honorable way. Once you're paying a teacher what he or she deserves in the first place, then you can talk about extra incentives. So until we're happy to discuss with the governor and anyone who has views about how to pay teachers, how to fund schools, we're happy to visit with them and to have our input, listen to theirs, and see what we can work out.
Okay, very good. We'll be back in just a moment with 2 students from Central Mid High School. our student guests this week are Sisong Ipka and Josh Timms. And Sisong, I think you get the honor of asking the first question.
Yes, I was wanting to know, when was OEA formed?
OEA was formed in October of 1889, just a few months after the land run. So we're 107 years old, going on 108 years old. We've been around just as long as the Oklahoma Territory.
And then why was OEA formed?
Well, a group of educators, just after the land run in the spring of 1889, schools were opening up in the territory, and teachers decided that, and educators generally decided that in order to promote public education in the new territory, that it would be a good thing to do to form an association. So they came together in the fall of 1889 and put the organization together. Of course, it's changed and grown a lot in 107 years, as you would expect, but we're part of Oklahoma. We're proud of that, and we expect to be around a long, long time.
Okay. What are the requirements to join OEA?
Well, you have to be an active educator or retired. We even have student membership for students that are preparing to become teachers. We have membership among higher education employees, professors at OU and other colleges around the state. And then we have teachers and support employees at schools all over Oklahoma that are members.
And what do you do specifically? And do you represent all the teachers?
Yes, the Oklahoma Education Association views itself as an organization that generally stands up for, advocates for public education. But also the teachers and other members of OEA that pay dues to us buy products and services, in essence, from us. And so therefore we feel that we have a duty to make sure that the interests of teachers and support employees are advanced and protected wherever we can do that. So that means that we do advocate for professional salaries for teachers, and we advocate for their fair treatment in their employment with school districts, wide range of things. But we're interested in public education as a whole. But yes, we do fight for the interest of the people that pay the dues to the organization.
What has OEA accomplished? What are your major accomplishments in the past?
Well, it'd take an awful long time to list out, but we do believe that the funding that exists for public schools would not be what it is today if not for our influence. We also think that what we try to do is to help the public be aware of the importance of their public school system and the need to support their public school system. A good example of that is a project that we have going on right now. We're doing it statewide. It's called Back to School Day for legislators and elected officials. And probably while we're taping this show right now, Governor Keating is scheduled to teach a high school speech and radio class at Midwest City High School this morning. What we're trying to do in this project is to focus the public through their legislators and their elected officials, focus everyone on the importance of and the need to support public education. So that's our primary goal, is to be the #1 supporter of public education, but to be interested in the welfare of the people that pay dues to the organization. And of course, the educational opportunities for children, that's the #1 goal. But we can accomplish good things for teachers by making sure that the public knows that schools are an important thing.
So
Go ahead, Susan. Finish out your question.
does OEA use tax money, like the public tax money?
No, OEA is a private nonprofit organization. Everything that the OEA does is done with money that is voluntarily given to it by people who choose to be members of OEA. So a teacher in the Norman Public Schools who is a member of OEA, and there are hundreds of them in this school district that voluntarily support the activities of the OEA and its national affiliate, the National Education Association, and the Professional Educators of Norman, our local affiliate here. That's all done voluntarily. No teacher is required to join the OEA. and no public funds are used to carry out the activities of the OEA.
And what are some of the education plans for the future?
Well, that's interesting. You perhaps have listened or heard in the last 2 or 3 days the Governor Keating's 5-point plan that he's calling for schools for this year, which includes funding and incentive pay plans for teachers and charter schools and school choice. These are all issues that I think that you're going to hear discussed and debated, some of them pretty hotly debated, throughout this legislative session, which, by the way, begins next Monday, February the 3rd, and will last through the last day of May this year, or I think May 30th is the official cutoff date. I think you're going to see that there's going to be a lot of public debate around the charter schools issue. Of course, the biggest debate every year is how much of the in this case, $217 million this year in new money, how much of that money is going to go to education in general, and in particular, how much is going to go to common schools, kindergarten through 12th. Though that's always a key issue.
So you do work directly with the state legislature, not through somebody else, but directly with them?
Yes, of course, I'm not employed by the state, but I am a registered lobbyist. In fact, I have my card just came in the mail yesterday for the new session. And so I am registered. I work at the Capitol most days during the legislative session. I visit with legislators concerning the various bills that have been introduced that affect public education. Some we are in favor of, some we oppose, and on others, like other people, we seek to learn as much as we can about them and to be involved in the decisions that are made.
How do you find time in your schedule to do projects like this? Do you just go around?
You mean to come
doing
here
stuff?
and speak to you? Well, I think it's something that we always look for the opportunity to do. We work with the teachers here in Norman, and I was just, when Ms. Behan called me, I just thought, this would be a great opportunity to come and visit with students. My own 2 sons graduated from Norman Public Schools, went all the way through the school system here, so I have a great deal of fondness for the teachers here and the school system in general. So when asked, decided to come.
Do you think the current education we get in our public schools fair, average, or good? What is your input on that?
Well, I think it's excellent. I think on the whole, it's an excellent value for the public. Granted, public schools are different from private schools, and you can't. What your expectations of public schools, what your expectations are going to have to be a little bit different from what you might expect for private schools. But I think as a public institution and considering the difficulties of educating children in today's world, I think public schools are great. I believe in them, and the Oklahoma Education Association believes in them. But we always recognize that things can be made better. So that's what we're trying to do.
We're going to quit while we're ahead. We're also out of time. I want to
Okay.
thank you very much for
All
coming
right.
this morning, and the 2 boys as well. And we'll be back next week with another Capital Ideas.